The judge froze when he saw me walk into the courtroom. No one imagined I was the heir to $5.8 million. But that morning, while everyone expected to see me humiliated, I was carrying in my purse the proof that I had been underestimated my entire life. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if you, for a second, feel that this sounds familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm 63 years old, and until 6 months ago, I believed my greatest achievement had been keeping my family together. I lived in a historic home in downtown San Antonio, the kind with an inner courtyard where purple bougainvillea grows and the smell of freshly brewed coffee mixes with the aroma of the pastries I baked every dawn. My routine had been the same for 40 years. Wake up at 5 in the morning, prepare breakfast for George, my husband, get the dough ready for the donuts and croissants for the bakery, and wait for him to come downstairs dragging his slippers across the Saltillo tile floor, already wearing that look of annoyance he had perfected over the last 2 decades. "Good morning, my love," I would always say, as I served him his fried eggs with refried beans and fresh tortillas. He would respond with a grunt, without looking up from the newspaper, as if my voice were an annoying noise interrupting his concentration. But I kept trying, because that's what wives from my generation do. We insist on love until we have no strength left. That March morning, while cleaning the table after breakfast, I found something that made my blood run cold. Tucked between the pages of the newspaper was a crumpled yellow envelope with handwriting I didn't recognize. I opened it with trembling hands. "My dearest George, last night was incredible. Anna doesn't suspect a thing, and your wife even less. See you Friday at our usual hotel. Your Anna, who loves you." The world stopped. The envelope slipped from my hands as if it were on fire. Anna was my daughter-in-law, my son Ethan's wife, the mother of my only 2 grandchildren, the woman I had taught how to make mole poblano, whom I hugged every Mother's Day telling her, "You're the daughter I never had." I sat down on the wicker chair in the courtyard, the same one where I had nursed Ethan 35 years ago, where I had cried every time George came home drunk, where I had prayed the rosary asking for my family to be happy. The bougainvillea seemed more violent that day, as if they had absorbed my pain and were reflecting it in their petals. I remembered the last family dinner, just a week ago. Anna had arrived in a new dress, the kind that costs more than my monthly allowance. She had sat very close to George, too close, and when he poured her wine, their fingers brushed for longer than necessary. I had noticed, but as always, I had chosen not to see the obvious. "Do you like the mole, Anna?" I had asked, proud of my family recipe. "It's delicious, Ellie," she had replied with that smile I now understood was fake. "You cook like an angel." George had smiled too, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at her, with those eyes that I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Eyes full of desire, of complicity, of secrets that completely excluded me. That afternoon, while George was taking his usual nap, mouth open and snores that shook the walls, I checked his phone. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped it twice. The messages were worse than the letter. Much worse. "My love, I can't take it anymore. I want to be with you always. That old woman is useless. She's just in the way. When we have all the money, we'll go far away." All the money? What money were they talking about? I kept reading, though each word was like swallowing ground glass. There were photos. Photos of the 2 of them in hotel rooms, holding each other, kissing, naked. Photos that disintegrated 40 years of marriage in seconds. But what hurt the most weren't the images. It was reading what Anna wrote about me. "I've already convinced Ethan that his mom is losing her memory. He says she gets confused sometimes, that she repeats the same stories. Once the doctor signs the mental incapacity papers, we can do whatever we want with the inheritance from his great-uncle Julian." My Uncle Julian, my father's brother, who had died last year and had left me as the sole heir to his fortune. An inheritance I had kept secret, storing the documents in a safe that only I knew about. An inheritance that George knew very little about, because I had learned, after 4 decades, not to trust him with everything. But somehow, he had found out. And now he was planning to steal not only my dignity, but my future as well. I closed the phone and sat motionless on the living room sofa, the same one where I had watched my grandchildren grow up, where we had celebrated birthdays and Christmases. Everything was the same, the family photos in their golden frames, the wooden crucifix my mother had given me on my wedding day, the hand-embroidered cushions I had made during the long winters when George worked at night. But I was no longer the same woman who had woken up that morning. That woman had died while reading her husband's messages with her daughter-in-law. The woman who remained was someone new, someone who had nothing left to lose, but who, without knowing it yet, had so much more to gain than anyone could imagine. As the sun set behind the red-tiled roofs of the neighborhood, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to find out how deep this betrayal went, and when I did, the world would understand that they had underestimated the wrong woman. For 3 days, I pretended I hadn't seen anything. I kept waking up at 5, making coffee in the enamel coffee pot I had inherited from my grandmother, serving the beans on the same blue Saltillo plates we bought for our first house. But every gesture was a theatrical performance, every smile a mask that hurt to keep in place. George acted normal, too normal. He said good morning with the same indifference as always, read his newspaper while chewing his eggs without even looking up at me. But now I noticed the details I had previously ignored. How he checked his phone every few minutes, how he smiled when he thought I wasn't looking, how he showered longer than necessary, and used a cologne he'd never owned before. On Friday morning, as he was getting ready to leave, he said without looking at me, "I'm going to Fredericksburg to see some new suppliers for the bakery. I'll be back tonight." Fredericksburg, the same town where the hotel mentioned in the messages was located. My stomach clenched as if I'd eaten something spoiled, but I kept my voice steady. "Have a good trip, my love. Do you want me to pack you something for the road?" "No need," he replied, and for the first time in weeks, he looked me straight in the eye. "I'll be fine." When I heard the engine of his truck fading down the cobblestone street, I ran to the living room window. I saw him turn the corner, in the opposite direction of Fredericksburg. He was heading towards Alamo Heights, where Ethan and Anna lived. My hands trembled as I dialed my son's number. "Hello?" Ethan answered, with that voice that had always filled me with tenderness. "Son, how are you? I just wanted to see if you needed anything from the market." "Oh, hey, Mom. No, we're good. Anna left early. She had some things to do downtown. I'm heading to the base now. I have a double shift." Anna had left early. The same day George had his business trip. The same day that, according to their messages, they planned to meet at the hotel. "Okay, honey, take care." "You too, Mom. I love you. I love you." The same words he had said to me since he was a child, but now they sounded hollow, like an echo of something that no longer existed. Because if he truly loved me, how could he be planning to have me declared mentally incompetent? How could he conspire against his own mother? That afternoon, I took the bus to Fredericksburg. I hadn't traveled alone in years. I always depended on George to go anywhere. The orange plastic seat was sticky from the heat, and the bus shook with every pothole on the highway. Next to me, a woman in a shawl was knitting what looked like a sweater, and the radio was playing a Patsy Cline song that reminded me of when we were dating and danced at town festivals. "I go out walking after midnight," the radio sang, and I thought about the irony of those words. Where was my eternal love? When had it turned into contempt and betrayal? The Starlight Motel was a modest place, the kind that doesn't ask for much ID and where rooms are rented by the hour. It was painted a dusty pink color, with pots of red geraniums at the entrance and a small fountain gurgling in the central courtyard. I sat on a bench in the square right across the street, under the shade of a large oak tree, and waited. I didn't have to wait long. At 3:15, I saw George's truck pull into the motel entrance. My heart began to pound so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. 5 minutes later, a yellow taxi arrived. Anna got out. She was wearing a red dress I had never seen on her, high heels, and her hair was done in a way that made her look younger. She walked with a confidence she never showed at my house, where she always played the part of the respectful, shy daughter-in-law. I watched them meet at the motel reception. George put his arm around her waist. She caressed his face. They kissed like teenage lovers, with a passion I couldn't remember ever being directed at me, not even in our first years of marriage. They went up the stairs hand in hand, laughing at something he whispered in her ear. They disappeared onto the second floor, where a lace curtain hid them from my view. I sat there until it got dark. I saw them come down 2 hours later, disheveled, with that satisfied look of someone who has just done something forbidden. They kissed again next to George's truck, and she left in her taxi while he stayed behind, smoking a cigarette, leaning against the truck, smiling in a way I hadn't seen him smile in years. When I finally got home, it was already 9 o'clock. George arrived 20 minutes later, his clothes wrinkled and smelling of cheap perfume. "How was Fredericksburg?" I asked, pretending to watch TV. "Good, good. The suppliers were interested, but we need to think about it more. These are important decisions. Important decisions. Like the decision to betray me. Like the decision to rob me. Like the decision to destroy 40 years of marriage for a woman who could be his daughter." That night, while he was in the shower, I went through his wallet. I found the motel receipt. Room 204. 2 hours, $200. I also found a folded piece of paper with numbers written on it. $500,000. Divide by 3. Attorney Mendoza. Medical certificate. April 15th. April 15th was in 2 weeks. The date, apparently, they planned to execute their plan to have me declared mentally incompetent and take my Uncle Julian's inheritance. Divide by 3. George, Anna, and who else? My own son. I sat on the bed, watching the man who had been my partner for 4 decades sleep. He snored with his mouth open, an expression of peace on his face that seemed obscene after what I had seen that afternoon. His gray hair was messy. He had a salsa stain on the shirt he hadn't bothered to change, and his hands, the same hands that had caressed me on our wedding day, now looked like the hands of a stranger. When had he stopped loving me? When had he started to see me as a burden, as an old woman only good for cooking and cleaning? Had he been pretending for years, or had he truly felt something for me that had now turned to contempt? I looked at our wedding photo on the nightstand. I was 23. He was 26. We looked so young, so full of hope. In that picture, he was looking at me as if I were the most precious thing in the world. Now he treated me like an old piece of furniture taking up unnecessary space. But as I watched them sleep, him and my dead marriage, something woke up inside me. A strength I didn't know I had, a coldness I had never felt. If they could plan my destruction in silence, I could plan theirs. If they wanted to play smarter than the stupid old woman, they were about to find out they had completely underestimated their opponent. Because Uncle Julian's inheritance was just the beginning of the secrets I kept, and they had no idea who they were messing with. The next day, I decided to do something I had never done in 40 years of marriage. I went through all the documents George kept in his desk. I waited for him to leave for the downtown bakery, the first one we opened together when we were young and dreamed of a prosperous future, and went into his study. The room smelled of old tobacco and the accounting books he consulted every night. His mahogany desk was organized with the military precision that had always characterized my husband. Pens in their holder, invoices stacked by date, and 3 drawers he kept locked. But I knew his habits better than he did. I knew he kept the keys in a small metal box in the closet. Behind the shirts I religiously ironed every Sunday. The first drawer contained bakery contracts I recognized, some bank loans we had signed together, and the deed to the house my parents had helped us buy when we got married. Nothing unusual there. The second drawer took my breath away. There was a manila folder labeled with my name, Eleanor Procedure. Inside, I found copies of my medical certificates from the last 5 years, my blood tests, and something that chilled me to the bone, a fake psychological report where I had supposedly been evaluated for memory loss, temporal confusion, and erratic behavior. The document was signed by a doctor I didn't know, Dr. Richard Mendoza, psychiatrist. The date on the report was from last month, a month in which I had never visited any psychiatrist. I kept reading with trembling hands. The report described a 63-year-old woman with incipient senile dementia who represented a danger to herself and to the management of considerable assets. It recommended immediate legal guardianship to prevent irresponsible financial decisions that could jeopardize the family estate. Every word was a slap in the face. They described me as a decrepit old woman, incapable of remembering basic conversations, who confused the names of her relatives and had tried to give money away to strangers on the street. All lies. All fabricated. But the worst part was on the last page. 3 signatures authorizing the guardianship procedure. George's, a notary I didn't recognize, and the third. The third shattered my heart into pieces I didn't know could exist. Ethan Vance. My son. My baby. The man I had held in my arms for entire nights when he had colic, whom I had taught to ride a bike in the courtyard, who had told me, "I love you, Mom," every night for the first 15 years of his life. He had also signed to have me declared mentally incompetent. I collapsed into George's desk chair, feeling as if someone had punched the air out of my lungs. The tears came without permission, dripping onto the false document that condemned my sanity. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure rage, of a betrayal so deep it ached in my bones. In the third drawer, I found something even more devastating: the real documents of Uncle Julian's inheritance. George had hired a private investigator to find out the exact details of what I had inherited. It wasn't just $5.8 million. My uncle had been richer than I even knew. He had properties in Port Aransas, stocks in 3 San Antonio companies, a bank account in the United States, and an art collection worth more than all the bakeries combined. The investigator estimated the total inheritance amounted to nearly $20 million. $20 million. A fortune I had kept quiet because my uncle had asked for discretion until all the legal paperwork was complete. A fortune for which my own family was willing to destroy me. At the bottom of the drawer was a smaller folder with photos. At first, I thought they were from our family trips, but when I took them out, my world tilted again. They were photos of George and Anna, but not just at the hotel. They had been photographed at expensive restaurants in the city, on the boardwalk in Port Aransas, in a jewelry store where he was buying her a ring that cost more than our family's budget for 6 months. There were photos of them entering an office together that I recognized. The notary public's office where they had forged the documents for my guardianship. But the photo that hurt the most was one where they were both sitting in my own living room, laughing as they looked at papers I recognized as remodeling plans. They were planning what to do with my house after they had me committed to a nursing home. On the back of that photo, someone had written in blue ink, "The new life starts soon. All that's left is for the old woman to sign, or for the judge to decide for her." The old woman. That's what they called me. As if my 63 years were a contagious disease. As if my age was reason enough to treat me like trash. I put everything back in the drawers, but not before making copies of the most important documents with the printer we had in the living room. My hands were no longer shaking. A strange calm had settled over me, as if I had finally understood the rules of the game they had been playing behind my back. That afternoon, when George returned, he found me preparing mole poblano in the kitchen, as if it were a normal day. The aroma of chocolate and chiles filled the house, mingling with the smell of fresh tortillas I had warming on the cast-iron griddle. "Smells delicious," he said, coming up behind me to give me a kiss on the cheek. A kiss that now burned my skin. "It's your favorite," I replied without turning to look at him. "I wanted to spoil you." He sat at the kitchen table while I served the plates. We ate in silence, as we had done thousands of times during our married life. But now the silence had a different weight. He thought it was the silence of a submissive wife who knew nothing. I knew it was the silence of a woman who had already seen everything. "Eleanor," he said suddenly, wiping his mouth with the cloth napkin I had embroidered years ago. "I've been thinking that maybe we should see a doctor." My spoon stopped halfway to my mouth. "A doctor? Why? Are you feeling sick?" "It's not for me. It's for you." His voice sounded concerned, but I could see the falsehood in his eyes. "Lately, I've noticed you're different. More distracted. Sometimes you repeat the same stories, or you get confused with dates." Liar. I had a better memory than he did. I remembered every family member's birthday, the due dates for all the bills, the names of all the bakery employees, but he needed to plant that seed of doubt to justify his betrayal. "I haven't felt confused," I answered calmly. "But if you think it's necessary, we can go to the doctor." His face lit up with a smile that tried to seem loving. I'm so glad you're being so understanding, my love. I already made an appointment for tomorrow with a very good specialist, Dr. Mendoza. He's well known in matters of, well, for senior citizens. Dr. Mendoza, the same one who had signed the false report about my supposed dementia. Perfect, I said, going back to my food as if nothing had happened. We'll go tomorrow. That night, while George slept, I called the private investigator that Claire, the hospital nurse, had mentioned. His name was Thomas Bell, and according to Claire, he was discreet, honest, and specialized in cases of family fraud. Mrs. Vance, he said in a calm voice, I understand your situation. Unfortunately, it's more common than people think. When do you need us to start? Right away, I replied, and I need it to be absolutely confidential. My family cannot know you exist. Of course. What exactly do you need? I need proof of everything. I need you to document every lie, every false document, every secret meeting. And I need you to help me protect something very important before it's too late. After hanging up, I stood by the kitchen window, looking at the city lights twinkling in the distance. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a woman who was about to take her life back, and they had no idea what kind of storm was coming for them. The appointment with Dr. Mendoza was scheduled for 10 in the morning. George woke me up early, with that fake tenderness he had perfected over the past few weeks. Good morning, my love. How did you sleep? He asked, stroking my hair like he used to when we were dating. Every caress made me nauseous, but I smiled like the obedient wife he thought I was. Very well, George. Shall we have breakfast before we go to the doctor? I made green chilaquiles with sour cream and queso fresco, his favorite breakfast since I first made it for him in our second year of marriage. As I cooked, he watched me from the kitchen table with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Was it guilt? Nerves? Or was he simply calculating how much longer he would have to pretend to love me? Eleanor, he said as he ate, I want you to know that what we're doing is for your own good. The doctor is going to ask you some questions, maybe do some simple tests. Just be natural. Answer whatever comes to mind. Be natural. As if my natural state was the problem. As if my sanity was something that needed to be evaluated by strangers who had already decided my fate before even meeting me. Of course, my love. I just want you to be at ease. Doctor. Mendoza's office was in an upscale part of San Antonio, in one of those glass buildings where the elevators smell of expensive disinfectant, and the receptionists look like models. The waiting room had cream-colored leather chairs and magazines no one read, with instrumental music that sounded like the soundtrack to a sad movie. George sat next to me, holding my hand with a tenderness that I found obscene. Every few minutes he checked his watch, as if he were in a hurry to get rid of me. Mrs. Vance, a young nurse in a pristine white uniform, called, The doctor will see you now. Dr. Mendoza was a bald man in his 50s, with gold-rimmed glasses and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His desk was covered with framed diplomas and photos of him shaking hands with important politicians and businessmen. Good morning, Mrs. Vance. I'm Dr. Mendoza, he said, gesturing for me to sit in the chair across from his desk. Your husband has told me you've been having some episodes of confusion lately. Episodes of confusion. That's what he called the clarity of a woman who had uncovered her family's betrayal. I don't feel confused, doctor, I replied calmly. I feel perfectly fine. He exchanged a quick glance with George, as if my answer was exactly what they expected. I understand, Mrs. Vance. But sometimes when we reach a certain age, our perception of ourselves might not align with reality. He opened a folder with my name on it. I see here you were born in 1961. Is that correct? Yes, doctor. And can you tell me what day it is today? Tuesday, April 8th, 2025. Very good. Do you know where we are? In your office, at the Medical Arts Tower on Main Avenue. Every correct answer seemed to irritate him more. He continued with basic questions. The name of the president, the capital of Texas, our wedding date, my children's names. I answered everything correctly, with a precision he clearly didn't anticipate. Mrs. Vance, he finally said, closing his folder. Your husband mentioned that you've been having trouble managing money lately. Is it true you've tried to give large sums to strangers? There it was, the central lie of their charade. I have never given money to strangers, doctor. Not large sums, not small ones. Are you sure? Sometimes people with certain types of dementia don't remember these episodes. Certain types of dementia. He spoke about me as if I weren't there, as if I were an object to be labeled and put away. I am completely sure, doctor. My memory is perfect. George shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Dr. Mendoza scribbled something in my file. Mrs. Vance, I'm going to ask you to step out for a moment. I need to speak with your husband about some technical aspects of the treatment. I went into the hallway, but I didn't move away from the door. Through the crack, I could hear fragments of their conversation, more lucid than expected. We need more evidence. The legal proceedings could get complicated. Maybe we should wait for more symptoms to show. Symptoms. They wanted me to go crazy to justify their theft. When they called me back in, the doctor had a forced smile on his face. Mrs. Vance, for now, everything seems to be fine. But I'd like to see you in a month for a more detailed follow-up. In the meantime, he handed me a bottle of pills. Take one of these every night before bed. They'll help you rest better. I took the bottle and read the label. Risperidone. It wasn't for sleep. It was an antipsychotic that, in high doses, could cause confusion, memory loss, and erratic behavior. They wanted to drug me. They wanted to artificially induce the dementia symptoms they needed to justify committing me. Thank you, doctor, I said, putting the pills in my purse. I'll take them religiously. When we left the office, George seemed nervous. What did you think of the doctor, my love? Very professional. He gave me a lot of confidence. That afternoon, while George was at the downtown bakery, I received a call from Thomas Bell. Mrs. Vance, I have important information. Can you come to my office? His office was on the second floor above a pharmacy, in a less glamorous but more honest part of the city. Thomas was a man in his 40s, with premature gray hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to see more than people wanted to show. Mrs. Vance, he said, spreading a thick folder across his desk. What your family is doing is a federal crime. Forgery, fraud, conspiracy to commit theft. They could go to prison for many years. I opened the folder and found photos, documents, recordings. He had followed George and Anna for 3 days. The images showed them not only at motels but also at the notary's office, in meetings with lawyers, and even entering my house when I wasn't there, photographing my belongings as if taking inventory. Here is the most important piece of evidence, he said, pointing to a document. This is the deed they prepared to transfer ownership of your house. They just need you to sign here, claiming it's a routine update of paperwork. My house. The house where I had raised my son, where I had cried my sorrows and celebrated my joys. They wanted to steal that too. But there's more, Mrs. Vance. Your son Ethan didn't just sign the guardianship papers. He also received $50,000 for doing it. Here's the bank receipt. $50,000. The price my own son had put on his mother's betrayal. So what can I do, Mr. Bell? We have 2 options. We can go directly to the police, or we can set a trap to get even more damning evidence. A recorded confession, for example. I thought for a few minutes, looking at the photos of my family destroying my life with surgical precision. I want the trap, I said finally. I want them to condemn themselves with their own words. It will be dangerous, Mrs. Vance. If they suspect anything, I have nothing left to lose, Mr. Bell. They made sure of that. That night I came home with Dr. Mendoza's pills in my purse. During dinner, as I served red pozole with all the traditional garnishes, shredded lettuce, radishes, oregano, chili pecan, George asked me, "Did you take your pill, my love?" "Not yet. I'll take it before bed. It's important you don't forget." The doctor was very clear. It's for your own good. For my own good. Everything they did to me was for my own good. My betrayal was for my own good. My dispossession was for my own good. My destruction was for my own good. I went up to the bedroom and, like every night for the past few months, I pretended to take the pill. But instead of swallowing it, I spit it into a tissue and stored it in a small metal box hidden behind my cookbooks. At the end of the month, I would have 30 pills. 30 pills that would be evidence of their attempt to drug me. 30 pills that would send them to prison. As George snored beside me, I lay awake, planning every move of my revenge. They thought they had me cornered, but they were about to find out they had woken up the wrong woman. The plan that Thomas and I devised was simple, but risky. I would feign an episode of confusion in front of George and Anna, so they would let their guard down and speak freely about their true plans. I would carry a hidden recorder in my wool shawl, the same one my mother had knitted before she died. We chose the perfect day, my youngest grandson Sebastian's birthday. He was turning 7. The family always gathered at my house for birthdays, and it was the perfect opportunity to have them all together. I spent the morning cooking as I always did for family celebrations. Mole poblano that required more than 20 ingredients and 3 days of preparation, red rice with peas and carrots, frijoles charros, and sweet tamales I had learned to make by watching my grandmother as a child. The kitchen filled with the aromas that had defined my life: cinnamon, chocolate, dried chilies, cumin. As I cooked, I mentally rehearsed my performance. I had to seem confused without overdoing it, lost without being ridiculous. A 63-year-old woman beginning to show the first signs of dementia. At 3 in the afternoon, they began to arrive. First Ethan with his 2 children, Sebastian and 10-year-old Andrea. The kids ran to me as they always did. "Grandma!" shouted Sebastian, hugging my waist. "Is the cake ready?" "Of course, my love," I replied, filled with all the genuine tenderness I felt for my grandchildren. "Your favorite, chocolate with strawberries." Andrea took my hand with the confidence only children who know they are unconditionally loved possess. "Grandma, will you teach me how to make tamales next week? I want to learn for when I'm older." "Of course, my sweet girl. I'll teach you all the family secrets." If only they knew this might be the last time we celebrated together in this house. If only they knew their grandfather and their mother were planning to take everything from me, including them. Half an hour later, Anna arrived, dressed in a pink outfit I hadn't seen before, expensive and elegant. She kissed my cheek with that fake smile I now recognized perfectly. "Eleanor, dear, how are you? You look wonderful today." "Thank you, honey. You look beautiful too." "Is that outfit new?" "Yes, George gave it to me for my birthday," she answered without thinking, and then froze when she realized what she'd said. Anna's birthday had been 3 months ago. I had given her a silver bracelet I'd bought with my personal savings, but apparently, George had had his own private celebration with her. "How thoughtful of him," I said, pretending not to notice her nervousness. "Ethan is so careless with those things." George arrived last, with a case of Corona and a bottle of Herradura tequila that cost more than our weekly grocery bill. "How's the birthday girl?" he asked, kissing my forehead with that false tenderness that sent shivers down my spine. "The birthday girl is a birthday boy, my love," I said, smiling. "It's Sebastian's birthday." "Oh, right, of course." I got mixed up for a moment, but he hadn't been mixed up. He had said birthday girl, thinking of Anna and their secret celebration. We sat down at the table I had set with my best linen tablecloth, the one I had embroidered during the early years of our marriage when I still believed in happy endings. The children chattered excitedly about school. Ethan served the drinks, and Anna helped me bring the dishes from the kitchen. On one of those trips, when we were alone in the kitchen, I switched on the recorder hidden in my shawl. "Anna," I said, feigning confusion, "when did you marry George?" She froze, a tray of tamales in her hands. "What did you say, Eleanor?" I said, "When did you marry my husband?" Sometimes I get the dates mixed up. I'm married to Ethan, Eleanor. Your son. George is my father-in-law." "Really?" I feigned surprise. "Oh, how silly of me. It's just that lately I see George so happy, so put together. I thought he'd gotten remarried." Anna looked at me with a mixture of panic and pity. "No, Eleanor. You're married to George. For 40 years. 40 years." I repeated as if trying to remember. "How strange. It feels like we just met yesterday. Or maybe much longer ago. I don't know anymore." We returned to the dining room, where I noticed Anna making discreet signals to George. He watched me more closely for the rest of the meal. After singing "Happy Birthday" and cutting the cake, the children went to play in the courtyard. It was the perfect moment for the second part of my performance. "Ethan," I said, turning to my son, "I need to tell you something important about the inheritance from your great-uncle Julian." The 3 adults tensed immediately. "What inheritance, Mom?" Ethan asked, feigning ignorance. "Oh, son, I sometimes forget I haven't told you. Julian left me money. A lot of money. But I can't remember exactly how much. Was it 5 million? 10? I'm not sure of anything anymore. George and Anna exchanged quick glances. Where is this money, my love? George asked in a voice that tried to sound casual. In the bank, I think. Or maybe in a safe. Julian explained everything, but I can't remember the details well. I put my hand to my forehead as if in pain. Sometimes I feel like I forget important things. Mom, said Ethan, approaching me with either genuine or very well-feigned concern. Have you been taking your medicine? What medicine, son? The ones Dr. Mendoza prescribed. For your memory. Oh yes, I think so. Although sometimes I forget if I've taken them or not. I looked at the three of them with a lost expression. Can you help me remember? It was like lighting a match in a powder keg. Of course we'll help you, my love, George said, taking my hand. In fact, I think you should give me all the important papers so I can look after them. The bank documents, the house deed, the inheritance papers. The papers for what inheritance? I asked, feigning total confusion. What inheritance are we talking about? Anna couldn't hold back any longer. Eleanor, you just told us your Uncle Julian left you a very large inheritance. Millions of dollars. Really? I don't remember saying that. I stood up, swaying slightly. I think I need to lie down. I feel very tired and confused. But before leaving the dining room, I did something I knew would make them explode. I took my purse and pulled out a folder I had prepared especially for this moment. Look what I found yesterday, I said, placing the folder on the table. I think they're important papers, but I don't understand what they mean anymore. The folder contained copies of real inheritance documents mixed with fake papers I had created to confuse them. The numbers varied between $5 and $20 million. The dates didn't match, and there were references to properties that didn't exist. I watched them devour the information with their eyes, calculating, planning, mentally dividing a fortune they believed would soon be theirs. Mom, Ethan said, feigning filial concern, I think Dad is right. Maybe you should let him handle these papers. They're too complicated for someone going through what you're going through. What you're going through. He couldn't even say the word dementia. He couldn't even admit they were planning to have me declared insane. You think so, honey? I asked in a small voice. It's just that these are my Uncle Julian's papers, and he asked that only I take care of them. But Julian is gone, my love, George said with false patience. And you can't handle these things alone anymore. It's for your own good. For my own good. Those cursed words again. All right, I whispered, leaving the folder on the table. If you all think it's for the best. I went to my bedroom, leaving the door ajar so I could hear their conversation. The recorder was still running in my shawl, which I had strategically left on the living room sofa. 5 minutes later, I heard their low but excited voices. Did you see her? She's worse than we thought. It's perfect. Now we can really speed up the legal process. 20 million, George. 20 million. That's so much more than we imagined. We have to act fast before she does something stupid and gives the money away. What if she gets worse and can't sign the papers? That's what the legal guardianship is for, Anna. Once the judge declares her incompetent, I'll have the authority to sign for her. How much time do we need? Dr. Mendoza says with the medication she's taking, in 2 weeks she'll be so confused that any judge will declare her incompetent. And after that? After that, my dear Anna, we are going to be free. Free and very, very rich. From my room, I smiled for the first time in months. I had them. I had them confessing everything in their own voices. Now, all that was left was the final part of my revenge. The next morning, I woke with a mental clarity I hadn't felt in months. I had the recorded confessions, the pills as evidence of the attempt to drug me, and all the documents proving their conspiracy. But Thomas had warned me that I needed one last piece of the puzzle, physical evidence that they had forged my signature. I called George from the kitchen while making coffee with cinnamon and brown sugar, just how he liked it. My love, I said in a sweet voice. Last night I was thinking about what we discussed regarding the inheritance papers. I think you're right. I can't handle these things alone anymore. I heard him sigh with relief on the other end of the line. I'm so glad you understand, Eleanor. It's what's best for you. Could you come over this afternoon? I want to sign whatever is necessary for you to take charge. I also want Anna and the notary to come. That way we can get it all over with. Of course, my love. I'll make the necessary calls. Mr. Morales can be here at 4 o'clock. Mr. Morales. The same complicit notary who had appeared in the investigator's photos. I spent the day preparing for the most important performance of my life. I put on my best navy blue dress, the one I had worn to my grandchildren's baptisms, and styled my hair in the same low bun I had worn for decades. I wanted to look like the same old Eleanor, the obedient and trustworthy wife. At 4 o'clock sharp, they all arrived together. George, Anna, Ethan, and a bald man in his 60s carrying a brown leather briefcase. Eleanor, George said, kissing my forehead. This is Mr. Morales. He's going to help us with all the legal paperwork. The notary shook my hand with a professional smile that couldn't hide his hurry to get the job done. Mrs. Vance, a pleasure to meet you. Your husband has explained the situation. I understand you wish to transfer the administration of your assets to avoid future complications. Yes, Mr. Morales. I don't trust my memory like I used to. A very wise decision, ma'am. I've prepared a few simple documents that need your signature. We sat around the dining room table, the same one where we had celebrated so many Christmases and birthdays. The notary spread several documents in front of me, pointing with his finger to the lines where I needed to sign. This first document grants your husband power of attorney to manage your bank accounts, he explained with the speed of someone who wanted to finish quickly. This second one gives him authority over the properties. And this third one transfers legal guardianship in the event of mental incapacity. I took the pen he offered, but before signing, I looked up at them. Are you sure this is the right thing to do? It's just, I have a strange feeling, like I'm forgetting something important. You're not forgetting anything, Mom, Ethan said, squeezing my shoulder. You're just tired. Sign, and then you won't have to worry about anything. And my grandchildren? I asked. What will happen to Andrea and Sebastian if I can't take care of them anymore? Anna quickly interjected. Don't you worry, Eleanor. The children will be perfectly fine. We'll take care of everything. I signed the first document with a trembling hand, faking the insecurity of a confused woman, then the second. When I reached the third, the one that would declare me mentally incompetent, I stopped. What exactly does this last paper say, Mr. Morales? It's just a precaution, Mrs. Vance. In case your condition worsens, your husband will be able to make medical decisions for you. Condition? What condition? The notary looked nervously at George. Your husband explained you've had some episodes of confusion. Oh, yes, I said, as if just remembering. Sometimes I forget things. Like the day I found George with Anna at the motel in Fredericksburg. The silence that followed was absolute. George turned pale. Anna dropped her purse, and Ethan stared at me with wide eyes. What did you say, Mom? That I saw you at the motel, I repeated, my voice clear and firm. On March 15th, room 204, 2 hours, $200. George shot up from his chair, knocking it over. Eleanor, you're confused. I've never been to any motel with Anna. Really? I took out my phone and showed them one of the photos Thomas had taken. Then who is this person who looks exactly like you kissing my daughter-in-law? Anna started to cry. Eleanor, I can explain. There's nothing to explain, Anna, I said, standing with a dignity I hadn't shown in months. I also know about the money my son received for signing the papers to have me declared insane. $50,000, wasn't it, Ethan? My son slumped in his chair as if all the bones had been removed from his body. Mom, I also know about the pills, Dr. Mendoza's prescription. I took the small box from my purse where I had saved every pill I'd pretended to take. Risperidone, an antipsychotic that can cause confusion and memory loss in high doses. Mr. Morales nervously closed his briefcase. I think it's best if I leave. There are obviously some family misunderstandings that— Don't go, Mr. Morales, I said firmly. You're involved in this too. I've seen the photos of you meeting with them to prepare false documents. I don't know what you're talking about, ma'am. You don't? I pulled another folder from my purse. Then how do you explain this fake psychiatric report bearing your notary seal? Or these property transfer documents you prepared without my knowledge? George tried one last desperate move. Eleanor, you're obviously having a psychotic episode. This proves you need immediate medical help. A psychotic episode? I smiled for the first time all afternoon. Like the episode I had last night when I listened to you all planning my future? I took the recorder out of my purse and pressed play. Their own voices filled the dining room. 20 million, George. 20 million. We have to act fast before she does something stupid. Once the judge declares her incompetent, I'll have the authority to sign for her. After that, my dear Anna, we are going to be free and very, very rich. The effect was devastating. Anna became hysterical. Ethan covered his face with his hands, and George stood frozen, staring at the recorder as if it were a venomous snake. 40 years, I said, looking at my husband. 40 years of marriage, of sacrifice, of unconditional love, and you decided it was better to drug me and rob me rather than simply ask for a divorce. I turned to Ethan, who still couldn't look me in the eye. And you, my son, you who slept in my arms when you had nightmares, who ran to me when you got hurt. You decided that $50,000 was worth more than your mother's love. Finally, I looked at Anna, who was sobbing uncontrollably. And you, the daughter of my heart, I taught you to cook. I took care of you when you were sick. I loved your children as if they were my own. And you repaid me by sleeping with my husband and plotting my destruction. Mr. Morales stood up, clearly frightened. Mrs. Vance, I had no full knowledge of— Be quiet, I said with a voice I had never used before. You knew exactly what you were doing. Forging notarized documents is a federal crime. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had ready. Mr. Rodriguez? This is Eleanor Vance. I have all the evidence we need. Can you come now? George looked at me in panic. Who is Mr. Rodriguez? My attorney, I replied calmly. The attorney I hired 2 weeks ago to take legal action against all of you. Fraud, forgery of documents, conspiracy, attempted false imprisonment, and adultery with aggravating circumstances. Anna stood up, staggering. Eleanor, please, we can fix this. I never wanted to hurt you. Fix this. My voice turned to ice. Anna, you wanted to have me put in a mental institution to get my money. There is nothing to fix. Ethan finally lifted his face, his eyes red from crying. Mom, I never thought it would go this far. I only signed because Dad told me it was to protect you, that you were really sick. And the $50,000? Was that to protect me too? He couldn't answer. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. It was Mr. Rodriguez, accompanied by 2 agents from the district attorney's office. Mrs. Vance? My lawyer said. Are you ready to proceed? Completely ready, Mr. Rodriguez. As the agents reviewed the evidence I had collected, I looked one last time at the people who had been my family. George was trying to negotiate with the officers. Anna was crying hysterically, begging for forgiveness. Ethan was frozen, in shock. Mr. Morales was sweating as he explained that he had only followed instructions. And I, for the first time in months, felt completely at peace, because I had finally stopped being a victim of the people I loved most. And I had discovered that I was much stronger than any of them had ever imagined. 3 hours later, my house was empty. The agents had taken George and Mr. Morales downtown for questioning. Anna had left in tears, screaming that she was the real victim in all of this. Ethan had left without a single word, dragging his feet like he used to as a child when he knew he'd done something very wrong. I was left alone in the dining room, surrounded by the dirty dishes from the most important meeting of my life. The forged documents were still scattered on the table, along with the evidence that had sealed my family's fate. I picked up a cold cup of coffee and sat down to process what had just happened. 40 years of marriage had ended in one afternoon. My son had betrayed me for money. My daughter-in-law had slept in my house after sleeping with my husband. And I had been forced to become a detective, an actress, and a strategist to save my own sanity and my inheritance. The phone rang. It was Thomas, the investigator. Mrs. Vance, I just spoke to your attorney. Everything went perfectly. The recordings are legally valid. The photographs are compelling. And the pills are direct evidence of medical fraud. How long will they be in jail? George could face up to 8 years for aggravated fraud and forgery. Mr. Morales, probably 6 years for notary corruption. Anna? Well, her case is more complicated because technically she didn't sign any documents. but her participation in the conspiracy could cost her 3 years. And my son? Ethan cooperated with documentary evidence, but he received money for it. Probably 2 years in jail, although he could negotiate parole if he fully cooperates with the investigation. I hung up the phone and walked into the kitchen. The aromas of the food I had prepared for Sebastian's birthday still hung in the air. Mole, tamales, rice, all that food made with love for people who were planning to destroy me. I opened the cupboard and took out a bottle of tequila we had saved for special occasions. I had never drunk alone in my life, but if there was ever a special occasion to get drunk, this was it. I poured myself a shot and toasted in silence to my freedom. The first sip burned my throat, but the second was smoother. By the third, I began to feel a strange lightness in my chest, as if someone had lifted a stone I had been carrying for years. For the first time in decades, I didn't have to cook for anyone other than myself. I didn't have to iron other people's shirts, or listen to complaints about the food, or pretend to be interested in George's television programs. I didn't have to smile when Anna arrived with expensive gifts bought with money my husband was giving her in secret. I didn't have to be the perfect wife, the understanding mother-in-law, the doting grandmother. For the first time in my adult life, I could simply be Eleanor, but the feeling of freedom didn't last long. At 8 o'clock at night, when it was already dark, I heard someone knocking on the door urgently. It was Andrea, my 10-year-old granddaughter, with eyes swollen from crying. "Grandma, is it true that Dad is going to jail?" My heart broke. The children were not to blame for anything, but they were going to pay the consequences for their parents' actions. "Come here, my love," I said, hugging her against my chest. "Where's your brother?" "Sebastian is at my friend Sophia's house. Mom is crying and won't stop saying you're going to take our house." The house. Anna had probably been living beyond her means, spending the money George gave her, hoping she would soon have access to my inheritance. "Andrea, honey, sit here with me. I need to explain something very important to you." I took her to the living room, and we sat on the sofa where she had watched cartoons on Sundays for years. "Your dad did something very bad, my love. Something that can hurt a lot of people. That's why the police took him away. But will he come back?" "I don't know, my sweet girl. The judges will decide that." "And what are we going to do?" "Mom says we're going to be left without money, without a house, without anything." I looked at that 10-year-old girl who had inherited her grandfather's brown eyes, but her great-grandmother's sweetness. She didn't have to pay for her parents' sins. "Andrea, do you remember what I told you this morning? That I was going to teach you how to make tamales?" "Yes, Grandma." "Do you still want to learn?" "Yes. But Mom says you're angry with us and you won't love us anymore." "Look into my eyes, Andrea," I said, taking her face in my hands. "I would never, ever in my life stop loving you and Sebastian. What happened between the adults has nothing to do with the love I feel for you and for Sebastian." "Really?" "Really. You are my grandchildren, and you will be my grandchildren forever, no matter what happens." I hugged her while she cried, and for the first time since I had discovered my family's betrayal, I cried too. But they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of liberation. "Andrea," I said when she calmed down, "I want you to tell your mom something. Tell her that tomorrow I'm going to talk to her. Not to fight, but to resolve things in the best possible way. Aren't you going to send Mom to jail? That doesn't depend on me, my love. That depends on the judges. But I'm going to do everything possible to make sure you and Sebastian are okay, no matter what happens." After Andrea left, I walked through my house as if it were the first time I had seen it. Each room told me a different story. The living room where we had watched soap operas together when Anna came into the family. The kitchen where I had taught my grandchildren to make cookies. The dining room where we had celebrated so many Christmases that I could no longer count them. But I also saw the places where I had suffered in silence. The table where George had yelled at me not to comment on business. The staircase where I had tripped last year, and no one had helped me because everyone was busy with their phones. The bedroom where I had pretended to sleep while my husband checked his lover's messages. This house had too many ghosts. Too many painful memories mixed with the good ones. Maybe it was time for a change of scenery. The next day, as I had promised, I went to Ethan and Anna's house. The Alamo Heights was a middle-class neighborhood where all the houses looked alike. 2 stories, a 2-car garage, a small front garden. I had bought that house for them as a wedding gift, paying the down payment and helping them with the first monthly payments until Ethan got a stable job as a firefighter. Anna opened the door with eyes swollen from crying. She was wearing a wrinkled housecoat, and her hair was disheveled. She looked older, as if she had aged 10 years overnight. "Eleanor," she whispered, "I wasn't expecting you. We need to talk, Anna, for the children." She let me into the living room that I myself had helped furnish. The armchairs I had given them were covered in dirty clothes, and there were plates of half-eaten food on the coffee table. "Where are Andrea and Sebastian? I sent them to my sisters. I didn't want them to hear this." We sat opposite each other, separated by a glass table that reflected our tired faces. "Anna," I began, "I want you to tell me one thing." "Why?" She started crying again, but this time her tears seemed genuine. "I don't know, Eleanor. I swear to God I don't know. It all started so gradually. George was always very attentive to me, very affectionate. When Ethan worked night shifts, he would come to keep me company, to make sure the kids and I were okay. And when did it become something more? About a year and a half ago. One night when the store on the corner had been robbed, I was very scared. Ethan was working and George came to stay at the house so I would feel safe. We were watching TV, and he comforted me when I started crying from nerves. "He comforted you?" "He hugged me. At first it was just that, a paternal hug. But then it felt different, more intimate." "And Ethan never suspected anything?" "George told him you were starting to show signs of dementia, that you needed someone to watch you more closely. He told him it was better for me to spend more time at his house to help you, and for him to stay here to take care of the children when Ethan was working." The perversity of the plan took my breath away. He had used my supposed mental illness to justify an arrangement that facilitated his adultery. "And the money? The $50,000 they gave Ethan?" Anna covered her face with her hands. "George told Ethan you had started giving money away to strangers, that you had tried to give $1,000 to the lady who sells flowers at the market just because you felt sorry for her. He told him we needed to act fast before you spent all the inheritance on charities." "And he believed him?" Ethan wanted to believe it. "The firefighters don't earn much, and we've been struggling financially. When George offered him the money and told him it was to protect you and secure the future of his grandchildren, Ethan thought he was doing the right thing." I was silent for a few minutes, processing the information. My husband had masterfully manipulated the entire family, using our mutual love as a weapon to divide us. "Anna," I said finally, "did you ever love me? Even a little bit?" She raised her face, and I could see in her eyes that the question had completely disarmed her. "I adore you, Eleanor. You've been more of a mother to me than my own mother. That's why I feel so dirty, so treacherous." "Then why didn't you tell me what was happening?" Because I was afraid you wouldn't believe me, and because a part of me, a horrible part of me, enjoyed feeling that someone desired me again." Her honesty surprised me. For the first time since I had discovered the betrayal, I saw Anna not as a villain, but as a confused woman who had made terrible decisions. But that didn't change what she had done. "Anna," I said, getting up from the armchair, "I understand why what happened, but I can't forgive you. Not yet. I know, Eleanor. I don't expect you to forgive me. However," I continued, "I am not going to let my grandchildren pay for the adults' mistakes. I'm going to make sure they have everything they need. A house, food, education, clothes, but with one condition." "What is it?" "That you never, ever lie to them about me again. That you don't use my generosity to teach them they can betray the people who love them and get away with it." Anna nodded vigorously. "I promise you, Eleanor. I swear it on my children." "Good. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to my attorney to establish a trust for Andrea and Sebastian. They're going to have enough money for college and to start their adult lives. But the money won't be available until they turn 25. And in the meantime? In the meantime, they're going to learn what it's like to work for what they want. They're going to grow up knowing that money is earned with effort and honesty, not with betrayal and lies." I left that house feeling strangely calm. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my future. And for the first time in decades, that future belonged only to me. 2 weeks after the confrontation, when the attorneys had already taken over all the legal proceedings, I received a call I didn't expect. It was from the jail. George wanted to see me. For 14 days, I had avoided thinking about him. I had kept my mind busy organizing the real inheritance documents of my Uncle Julian, establishing the trust for my grandchildren, and making a decision I had been postponing for years, selling the house and starting over somewhere else. But his voice on the phone, hoarse and broken, transported me for a moment to the early years of our marriage, when he was the man I had fallen in love with. "Eleanor, please. I need to see you. Just 10 minutes. There are things I need to tell you before it's too late." Something in his tone convinced me to go. Perhaps I needed closure, a final conversation that would allow me to definitively close the chapter of 4 decades of my life. The county jail was on the outskirts of San Antonio, a gray and depressing building surrounded by high walls and barbed wire. The screening process was humiliating. They searched my purse, ran me through a metal detector, and made me wait in a room that smelled of cheap disinfectant and despair. When they finally took me to the visiting room, I saw George sitting on the other side of a metal table, separated by a thick glass partition. He was wearing an orange inmate shirt that was too big for him, and his hair, always perfectly styled, was disheveled and greasy. He looked older, more fragile, as if the jail had sucked out all the arrogance that had characterized him in recent years. I picked up the phone that allowed us to communicate through the glass. "Hello, George. Eleanor. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." I wasn't sure either. We remained silent for a few moments, looking at each other through the glass as if we were strangers. In a way, we were. "How are the grandkids?" "They're fine. I'm taking care of them while Anna looks for work." "Anna is working?" Her world fell apart, George. Without the money you were giving her, without the hope of keeping my inheritance, she had to face reality. She's working in a bakery, earning minimum wage. George closed his eyes as if it hurt him to hear that. "Eleanor, I came here to tell you something I should have told you years ago. I was wrong. I was wrong about everything." "About everything? About treating you like you were less than me? About believing that because I earned more money, because I had more education, I had the right to despise you? About thinking I could find something better than 40 years of loyalty and unconditional love?" His words sounded sincere, but they were arriving 20 years too late. "Why, George? Why didn't you just ask me for a divorce? Why did it have to be so cruel?" "Because you own half of everything we built together. The house, the bakeries, the bank accounts. A divorce would have left me with nothing, and my pride couldn't accept that." "Your pride?" "My stupid damn pride. I preferred to see you locked up in a mental institution rather than admit I had failed as a husband." The brutal honesty of his confession left me speechless. "And Anna," he continued, "Anna was my last attempt to feel young again, to feel like someone admired me, desired me. You already knew me too well. You knew all my flaws, all my lies. She saw me as the successful man I believed myself to be." "Did you love her?" "No, I never loved her. I used her just like I used you. Just like I used Ethan. And now what? Now that you have nothing, you come to ask for forgiveness?" "I'm not coming to ask for forgiveness, Eleanor. I know I don't deserve it. I'm coming to tell you that during these 14 days in this cell, I've had time to think about our entire life together. And I've realized that the happiest moments of my life were with you. When we were young and built the first bakery with our own hands. When Ethan was born and we carried him together for the first time. When we celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary and danced in the courtyard of the house until 3 a.m. The memories he mentioned were real. I remembered them too, but they were buried under decades of contempt and humiliation. Those moments existed, George, but so did all the others. All the times you told me I wasn't good for anything but kneading bread. All the times you made me feel stupid and insignificant. All the nights you slept with Anna while I was waiting for you at home. I know, and I know it's too late to change it. Then why did you ask me to come? Because I wanted you to know that you were right and I was wrong. You are the strongest, smartest, bravest woman I have known in my life. And I was so stupid I didn't realize it until I had already lost you. George, let me finish, please. I want you to know that the way you handled this whole situation, the way you set the trap, how you got the evidence, how you confronted us all, it was brilliant. It was the smartest performance I have seen in my life, and it proved to me that I never really knew you. What are you talking about? He spoke of how, for 40 years, he believed he was married to a simple, conformist woman who didn't have the ability to defend herself. And it turns out he was married to a strategist, a woman who could outsmart him without even trying. His words caused a strange emotion in me. For the first time in our married life, George was really seeing me. He was recognizing me as his equal, or even his superior. But it was too late. How long are you going to be here? My lawyer says probably 6 years if I behave myself. Anna is going to be released on parole next week. Apparently my testimony helped her. Your testimony? I told them she was a victim of my manipulation, just like you. That I convinced her you were really sick. That I lied to her about your intentions with the money. The judge considered her a collateral victim of my plan. I was surprised he had done that. The George I knew would have tried to take everyone with him. Why did you help her? Because Ethan needs her. And because my grandchildren need her. And because I've already caused enough damage. We were silent again. Through the glass, I could see that he had tears in his eyes. Eleanor, there's one more thing I want to ask you. Tell me, will you ever be able to forgive me? Not so we can be together again. Not so things can be the way they were before. Just so you can live in peace without carrying all this resentment. The question took me by surprise. I hadn't come prepared to talk about forgiveness. I don't know, George. Honestly, I don't know. I understand. Just think about it. For yourself, not for me. Resentment is like poison you take, hoping the other person will get sick. We said goodbye with a handshake through the glass. As I left the jail, I felt strangely empty. I hadn't found the closure I was looking for. If anything, I had more questions than before. Was it possible that the man who had planned my destruction was the same one who had just recognized my strengths with genuine humility? Was it possible to change so much in 2 weeks? Or had he always had that capacity for reflection hidden under layers of arrogance and fear? Arriving home, I found Andrea in the kitchen, trying to make tortillas with the electric machine I had taught her to use. Hi, Grandma. I'm practicing for when you teach me how to make tamales. How are they coming? Terrible, she laughed. But Mom says practice makes perfect. Your mom is right. I sat beside her and took some of the dough to show her the correct technique. Grandma, can I ask you something? Of course, my love. Do you hate Dad and Mom for what they did? The question from a 10-year-old was more direct and honest than anything I had heard from the adults in weeks. I don't hate them, Andrea. I'm very hurt, very disappointed, very sad. But hate is a very heavy thing to carry, and I don't want to carry heavy things anymore. Does that mean you're going to forgive them? Maybe someday, when I'm ready. Forgiveness isn't something you can force, my sweet girl. It's something that comes when it comes. And in the meantime, you and Sebastian are going to continue to be my favorite grandchildren. And I'm going to continue to be the grandma who loves you more than anything in the world. Andrea smiled and hugged me, filling my hands with flour. And for the first time since I had started this nightmare, I felt that maybe, just maybe, we were going to be okay. We were all going to be okay. A month after the visit to the jail, while organizing the last details to sell the house, the phone rang with news I never expected to hear. It was Mr. Rodriguez, my attorney, with a voice that sounded between surprised and concerned. Mrs. Vance, I need to see you urgently. Something unexpected has come up in the case. What kind of unexpected thing, Mr. Rodriguez? It's better if we talk in person. Can you come to my office this afternoon? Mr. Rodriguez's office was in the historic downtown of San Antonio, in one of those restored colonial buildings where the high ceilings and thick walls kept it cool even on the hottest days. I arrived on time at 4, with that mix of curiosity and anxiety that comes from knowing that something important is about to change your life again. Sit down, Mrs. Vance, he said, pointing to the leather chair in front of his desk. What I'm going to tell you is going to be disturbing. There's not much that can disturb me anymore, Mr. Rodriguez. That's what I thought. But it turns out your case has generated repercussions that no one anticipated. He opened a thick folder and spread several documents in front of me. After Mr. Morales was arrested, the State Bar Association began a complete investigation of all his cases from the last 5 years. What they found is extensive. Extensive how? Your husband and Mr. Morales weren't the only ones involved in these types of frauds. Apparently, they had been operating a network for years to swindle elderly people, especially widowed women or those with absent husbands. I felt the blood freeze in my veins. Are you telling me there were more victims like me? At least 12 documented cases in the last 3 years. Women between 55 and 75 years old, all with considerable assets, all declared mentally incompetent by the same Dr. Mendoza, all represented by the same Mr. Morales. And what happened to those women? Here's what's disturbing, Mrs. Vance. 3 of them are currently interned in private nursing homes. Their families have complete legal guardianship over their assets. 2 more died in suspicious circumstances. The other 7 managed to resist the legal process, but lost significant amounts of money in fees and medical expenses. I was silent, processing the magnitude of what I had just heard. My case hadn't been a desperate plan born of George's adultery. It had been part of a systematic criminal operation. Did George know about the other women? That's the key question, Mrs. Vance. According to his initial testimony, he believed it was an isolated case, but recent evidence suggests otherwise. What kind of evidence? Mr. Morales, trying to reduce his sentence, has been fully cooperating with the investigation. He revealed that your husband not only knew about the other victims, but he himself had recruited some of them. Recruited? Apparently, George identified older women with considerable assets, established social relationships with them, gained their trust, and then referred them to Dr. Mendoza, alleging they showed signs of dementia. The room began to spin. All this time, I had thought that George's betrayal was personal, directed specifically against me, but it turns out I had been just one more victim in a production chain of scams. How many women, Mr. Rodriguez? In total. The records we have found so far indicate at least 26 cases in the last 8 years. But we are sure there are more. 26 women, 26 wives, mothers, grandmothers who had been betrayed and dispossessed by men they trusted. And the ones who died? They are being investigated as possible homicides. Apparently, when some victims resisted too much or threatened to expose the operation, they suffered accidents or sudden medical complications. My God. There's more, Mrs. Vance. Your husband wasn't a minor accomplice in this operation. He was one of the leaders. Bank records show that he had received more than $2 million in commissions for successfully processed victims during the last 5 years. $2 million. Money stained with the blood and tears of innocent women. Money that he had spent on gifts for Anna, on trips, on maintaining a double life while I baked bread every dawn to contribute to our family expenses. What is going to happen now? The charges against your husband have been significantly expanded. We're no longer just talking about fraud and forgery. Now he's facing charges of criminal association, aggravated extortion, and possible homicide. Instead of 6 years, he will probably spend the rest of his life in jail. And Dr. Mendoza, also arrested. His office was a complete facade. None of the diagnoses he issued in the last 8 years were valid. All the women he declared incompetent were perfectly sane. I got up from the chair and walked towards the window that overlooked the main square. Below, normal life continued. Street vendors offering corn on the cob and shaved ice, children running around the fountain, couples sharing benches under the shade of the laurels. A world where older people weren't hunted as prey by their own families. Mr. Rodriguez, how is it possible that this operation lasted so many years without anyone noticing? For the same reason your case almost worked, Mrs. Vance. Our society is willing to believe that older women lose their sanity more easily than men, that we are naturally more trusting, more manipulable, and the legal system favors those who have more money to pay for expensive attorneys. And what happens now with the women who are still interned? That's the complicated part. Their cases are going to be reviewed completely, but the process can take months. In the meantime, they remain locked up, medicated unnecessarily, separated from their families. Can I do anything to help them? In fact, yes. The prosecution wants you to testify as the star witness in the case. Your testimony could be the key to convicting the entire network. Of course I'm going to testify. But there's something else, Mrs. Vance. Something that might interest you personally. I returned to the chair, preparing for another shocking revelation. Tell me. One of the women interned is someone you know. Her name is Hope Moreno of Rivera. Does that name ring a bell? Hope. My second cousin, the daughter of my father's sister. I hadn't seen her in years, since Uncle Julian's funeral. Is Hope interned? When? How? 8 months ago. Her son alleged she had advanced senile dementia after she refused to sell him a property she had inherited. Guess who signed the medical certificate and who notarized the documents? Dr. Mendoza and Mr. Morales. Exactly. And guess who casually met Hope's son at a business meeting and suggested he consult these professionals to protect his mother? The world stopped. Hope, my cousin Hope, who had danced with me at my wedding, who had held Ethan when he was a baby, who had taught me to knit when we were teenagers. Where is she interned? At the San Rafael nursing home, here in San Antonio. According to the reports, she is medicated with high doses of antipsychotics and sedatives. Officially, she has such advanced dementia that she doesn't even recognize her own name. But in reality, Mrs. Vance, she's probably as sane as you and I are. Only no one has bothered to verify it because her son already has total control over her properties. I was silent for several minutes, feeling a rage I hadn't experienced even during my own betrayal. It was one thing for my own family to betray me. Another, very different thing was to know that George had been hunting innocent women like trophies for years. Mr. Rodriguez, I want to do more than testify. What do you have in mind? I want to use part of my inheritance to hire the best attorneys there are. I want them to get each of those women out of those nursing homes. I want them to review each case, to sue every accomplice family, to make sure that neither George nor his collaborators ever see freedom. That's going to cost a fortune, Mrs. Vance. I have $20 million, Mr. Rodriguez, and I just found the best use I can give it. Are you completely sure? A revenge of that magnitude can consume years of your life. It's not revenge, Mr. Rodriguez. It's justice. And the only ones who deserve justice are we, the women who were betrayed by the people we trusted most. And if your cousin isn't the same person you remembered, and if she's really damaged by so much forced medication, then I'm going to make sure she has the best possible care for the rest of her life. But first, we're going to give her the opportunity to be herself again. That night, instead of continuing to pack my belongings for the move, I unpacked everything and put my house back in order. I wasn't going to move anymore. I wasn't going to hide anymore. I had a war to fight, and I had just found my army, 26 betrayed women who deserved justice, and I was going to make sure they got it, no matter the cost. Because I had finally understood that my story wasn't just mine. It was the story of all of us. The following days became a race of paperwork and decisions I never imagined facing at 63 years old. As soon as I hung up the phone with Mr. Rodriguez, my determination was unwavering. I would not only testify, but I would lead the fight to free each of the women trapped in that network of fraud and silence. At dawn, I had already contacted a team of attorneys specializing in human rights and the protection of the elderly. I offered them a generous advance and the promise of covering all the fees that were needed. I wanted speed, decisiveness, and discretion. No one else was going to suffer what I had suffered. The first step was to visit the San Rafael nursing home, where my cousin Hope had been interned for months. The building, painted white that claimed to be clean, smelled of cheap disinfectant and resignation. At the reception, a young woman in a lavender uniform asked for my identification. When I gave her my name, her gaze changed. Perhaps she recognized the last name from the recent news, or perhaps she sensed that I didn't intend to leave without seeing my cousin. Mrs. Moreno de Rivera is under medication, she said in a neutral voice. Visits are only 15 minutes. 15 minutes is enough for me, I replied, leaving my attorney's card on the counter. And if anyone tries to stop me from seeing her, I will speak to the district attorney investigating this place. The young woman swallowed and nodded. She led me down a long, icy hallway to a small room where, behind a metal bed, Hope was. Her hair, once a brilliant black, was now a mixture of unkempt grays. Her hands trembled from the excess of sedatives. But her eyes, when they saw me, lit up with a spark I recognized instantly. "Eleanor?" she whispered, as if she feared someone would punish her for pronouncing my name. I ran to hug her. I felt her fragile body, but her mind was there, clear, alive. "It's me, cousin. I'm here to get you out of this hell." "No, you can't," she murmured. "They say I'm crazy, that I don't remember anything. Listen to me." I took her face in both hands. "You're not crazy. You were a victim of the same people who wanted to destroy me. I already have evidence, attorneys, and the DA on our side. You're going to get out of here, I promise you." Tears began to roll down her cheeks. During the 15 minutes they allowed us, she told me what little she remembered before they drugged her. Arguments with her son over the sale of a property, a routine appointment with a psychiatrist recommended by a friend of her son, then nights of confusion and deep sleep. It was the same pattern they had tried with me. Upon leaving, I signed a formal request for an independent medical review and asked that the doses of antipsychotics be stopped immediately. The director of the center stammered excuses, but the mere mention of the DA made him give in. That same afternoon, I visited 2 other women whose cases were on the investigation list. One of them, Mrs. Pilar Quintana, squeezed my hand with unexpected strength when I told her she wasn't alone. "I thought I would die here, without anyone believing me," she told me through sobs. I understood that my mission went beyond my family or my cousin. It was about giving a voice back to everyone. The media began to find out. My face appeared on local and then national news. They interviewed me on radio and television. "The woman who dismantled a network of scams against elderly women," read the headlines. I spoke calmly, recounting the facts, but always insisting that the problem was deeper. A society that underestimated older women and a legal system that allowed our sanity to be doubted with a simple signature. Meanwhile, George faced one hearing after another. His attorneys tried to postpone trials, allege health problems, even filed a request for bail. It was useless. The new evidence from the DA sank him more and more each day. When I learned that he would be transferred to a high-security prison in Texarkana, I felt no joy, only a serene peace. It was the inevitable consequence of years of cruelty and ambition. Ethan, on the other hand, collapsed into a whirlpool of guilt. One afternoon, he came to my house, unannounced, with a haggard face and red eyes. He brought Andrea and Sebastian with him, holding their hands. "Mom," he said as soon as he entered, "I'm not coming to justify myself. I'm coming to ask for forgiveness." I remained silent, looking at him. I wanted to scream, remind him of every betrayal, every lie. But when I saw my grandchildren clinging to his legs, I understood that my son's punishment was already enormous. He had lost the respect of his own children and of himself. "If you really want to redeem yourself," I replied at last, "help the women who are still trapped. Use your work as a firefighter to bring food, to accompany their families. Do something useful." Ethan nodded, with tears falling uncontrollably. From that day on, he joined the support campaigns we organized with the attorneys. I saw him carry boxes, clean rooms, console elderly women. It didn't erase the past, but it was a start. Over time, I managed to get Hope out of the nursing home. The first day at my house, when she tasted the coffee made by me, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You gave me my life back," she told me. I prepared a room with a view of the courtyard where the same bougainvillea grew that had witnessed my own tears months ago. Now those flowers seemed to celebrate our resistance. The other women began to be released one by one. Some returned to their families. Others chose to live alone. I offered them financial and legal support, but above all, I offered them sisterhood. We met every week at my house. We shared stories, recipes, future plans. We started calling ourselves the Unbeatables, because none of us had given up despite the attempts to erase us. While that new family grew, I made a final decision about my estate. I sold the chain of bakeries, except for the first one that George and I had opened when we were young. I wanted to keep it not as a reminder of him, but of my own strength and of the honest work I had built with my hands. I turned the rest of the inheritance into a permanent fund for the legal defense of older women throughout the United States. I wanted my story to serve as a shield for those who still didn't know they were prey in the sights of predators. A year later, The main trial came to an end. The courtroom was full. Journalists, activists, families of the victims. When the judge read the sentence, life imprisonment for George and Dr. Mendoza, 25 years for Mr. I. Morales, a deep silence filled the room. I felt no triumph, only justice. I looked at George one last time. His eyes sought mine, perhaps expecting mercy. I only bowed my head, a silent farewell. There was no hate, only the definitive closing of a door that would never open again. That night, I returned to my house and found Andrea and Sebastian playing in the courtyard, their laughter mingling with the perfume of the bougainvillea. They asked me to tell them again how I had discovered the entire conspiracy. I told them the story as a tale of courage, not of revenge, so they would understand that justice and dignity can always rise up, even when everything seems lost. Looking at the sky over San Antonio, starry and serene, I finally felt that my life belonged entirely to me. I was not the fearful widow or the betrayed wife. I was Eleanor Vance, a woman who had faced contempt, lies, and greed, and who had turned pain into a movement of protection and hope for many others. I took a deep breath, knowing that the scars would remain, but also that each one was a medal of my own battle won. Lesson of life. Never let silence become your prison. Age, gender, or shared years are no excuse for someone to steal your voice or your dignity. The truth, however painful, always sets you free. Have you ever experienced or known someone who has gone through such a deep family betrayal? Tell me about your experience in the comments. I want to read you. If this story touched your heart, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so that this message reaches those who need it most.